Jusso Valimaki has cleared waivers. What does that mean for the Utah Hockey Club? We're going to tell you. Plus, are the goaltending dominoes starting to fall in the trade market? We will discuss on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes. Welcome in. It's time once again to talk some Utah Hockey Club. This is the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, joined by longtime team analyst Robyn Leaño. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And Robyn, as we look ahead, some good news, I think, for the Utah Hockey Club defensively here. We're going to talk about Jusso Valimaki clearing waivers and what does that mean. Also, the trade market it's been warm the whole time, right? But is it going to start to heat up now as we're getting towards that March trade deadline? A big trade in the goaltending world today. We're going to talk about Ville Husso going to the Anaheim Ducks, which I think I know what happens next. But first, let's talk Utah Hockey Club. Valimaki clears waivers. For the fans who might not understand, let's explain, okay, what exactly does this mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We can explain the whole waiver wire process here, Tom. And essentially, a player who is, quote, waivers eligible needs to be, in order to get, quote, assigned to a to the minor league club, they need to clear what we call waivers. And what that means is that that player essentially gets to put on a just put on a list that any team within a 24-hour period can claim them off of that waiver instead of them getting sent down into the American Hockey League. If 24 hours passes, that player is eligible to get sent down to the AHL.
So Valimaki clears waivers. One of the things that I think is important to note, we've mentioned it before, but it bears repeating. Sometimes you don't see a player claimed on waivers and then they get traded later. And Robyn, that's a bit of a head scratcher, right? Well, why didn't you just pick the guy up for free? Why did you end up sending a fifth rounder for this player? Because if you take a player off waivers, you get their contract, full boat. So you're paying what they're due, and Valimaki has a year after this. You're paying them for that contract, whereas in a trade, you could negotiate with the team to keep up to half of the salary and retain that in exchange. So that's sometimes why you will see a player clear waivers. Then they'll come back up, get traded anyway, and you think, well, geez, that team could have had him for free. Why didn't they claim him? There's reasons, and maybe cap space is one of them. So I just wanted to point that out as well. But now that Valimaki's cleared, he can be designated for assignment, to use a baseball term, and he's going to go to Tucson in the American Hockey League, which honestly, I don't mind at this point. I think having him on that roster is a nice little shot in the arm for the Roadrunners.
It really does. It is just an additional amount of depth that the Roadrunners really need. I mean, because I feel like at this point we've we've talked about how the Roadrunners getting picked apart. We talked about players getting called up or other kind of injuries happening, and for Utah, that also affects what's going on in Tucson. And now that players are getting more healthy, Tucson also needs their stockpile, recharged, so to speak here. And adding adding someone who's got that, NHL experience in Jusso Valimaki is absolutely huge for the Tucson Roadrunners.
Tucson right now, by the way, in case you're curious, to the American Hockey League's Pacific Division, they have played 50 games. They have 22 games left, so they play 72. They are 24, 22, 2-2, 52 points. It's a .520 win percentage. They are 5 points behind both the fifth place Abbotsford Canucks and sixth place San Jose Barracuda. And the Colorado Eagles are up in fourth with 63 points. Now, Robyn, it's much like the NHL where you can get a swing team to come over and end up, in this case, it would be the Central Division is the other division where you could see a Pacific Division and a Central Division team cross over. So depends on the point totals, depends how it all plays out. It's not over for the Tucson Roadrunners. So for however long Valimaki's there, and I don't think he's there for the rest of the season, but for however long he's there, this gives the Roadrunners depth, and it gives Utah, I think, a little bit more flexibility when dealing up top, because you have a veteran guy who's played NHL minutes, who you can either recall to plug when you move someone up top, or can be moved themselves. So I think that this does give the Utah Hockey Club flexibility here, even more so heading into the trade deadline.
Yeah, even if anything too, and you mentioned a little bit of what that could possibly mean for divisional standings and stuff like that, and how that can affect it. Even then, the Calder Cup playoffs, by the way, Tom, is one of the at least ever since the West Coast resurgence of the AHL, Calder Cup playoffs has gotten so weird. It's not an even playoffs, right?
It's not.
I just went over to the AHL.com just because I was curious. I wanted to see 7 teams from a 10-team Pacific Division, which the Tucson Roadrunners are in, will go to the Calder Cup playoffs. 6 from the Atlantic, 5 from the North and Central. It makes sense, but
it's kind of, and it's Robyn, everything happened for those who may not know, especially if you're a Utah fan, but you didn't cover the American League. I was there when Tucson started as part of the AHL's West Division drive. A lot of the Western teams said, look, if you want us to have an AHL affiliate and not try to develop our players elsewhere, we want them close.
Mm-hmm.
And so this push for the Western, what turned into the Pacific Division, developed. Tucson was part of that. Yep. And the reason it was done that way is the other thing they agreed on was they were going to play fewer games than all the other teams. Because, Robyn, I don't think a lot of people know this, but the behind-the-scenes scuttlebutt was, if that division didn't happen, those teams out west were basically going to tell the AHL to get lost and form their own 8-team league for their top prospects and play amongst each other. So the AHL kind of had to cave to their demands of not wanting to play as much and to reducing the travel for those Western teams. So that's how we ended up with that. And as you say, and now the knock-on effect, 10 years later, here we are looking at a really weird playoff setup.
Yeah. And even then, right? Yeah, I think when in the initial bit of it, right, it was a pretty even at first because they actually had this was all pre-COVID, right? They had a pretty even playoffs across the board. But what happened was the Central Division, the North Division, and the Atlantic Division all played 72 games. But the Pacific Division only played 67,
66.
something like that.
66
games. They only played 66 games. It was, and why would that happen? Because they really only played each other. Occasionally they played Central Division, but they'd only play each other because why? They only wanted to take the bus to see each other because they didn't want to charter. They didn't want to spend all that extra money.
And the other thing too that was, so me being in Tucson, I remember this. Even when I was in the Central Division with the old Peoria Rivermen, we didn't cross over to play too many teams in the East at all. Now, fortunately for me, I grew up in Buffalo and I went to college in Rochester, New York, where Rochester Americans play. I did get to call one game in Rochester, and I cherish that. That was a fantastic moment for me. But that one game, and I just happened to be there when Peoria was going there that one year. So that the American League does not cross over a whole lot. That you will not see half of that league. It's not like the NHL is now, where you see each opponent at least once.
Yeah, that's why. Which, by the way, the AHL still does have All-Star Weekend. That's why the All-Star Weekend for AHL means a lot to some people because you're able to watch action for the first time. Sometimes players from the other side.
Yeah, guys that you just absolutely do not see unless you've got their streaming product. So. But so anyway, Valimaki clearing waivers. He's going to make it to the Roadrunners. The flexibility is there now, I think, for Utah Hockey Club. And that's going to help him coming up on the trade deadline. Speaking of which, there was a goaltending trade that we need to talk about here, and want to talk about Ville Husso going to the Ducks. We're going to give you the details on the deal here, and we're also going to talk about the implications, possibly, for the Utah Hockey Club. And today's show is brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. Hey, are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, which gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. I'm a no shells guy. I snack at my desk, and it's more convenient. Plus, look, I'm guilty. I snack while I drive too, right? I'm not going to take both hands off the wheel to pop the shells. Maybe if I'm sitting at home watching a movie, maybe I'll go for the classic crack of the old shell with the in shell. That is the classic way to eat them, but no shells is the way I like to go for it. It's perfect grab and go snack. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, Tom Callahan, Robyn Leaño here with you in the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thanks for joining us. If you have not already, please give us a subscribe, follow along, because even if you're a fan of another team, Robyn, this journey is about to get weird in a good way. Oh, yeah. Right? Like in a Bill and Ted good way, I think it's about to get weird for the Utah Hockey Club, because they're on the edge of the wild card race now. And there's hope, right? There's hope.
It feels like it. It definitely feels like there's hope. And it really begs, puts the question into, and, on which direction Bill Armstrong is leaning as the trade deadline approaches. It's like, is he gonna say, you know what? I think we can do it. Let's add let's go for the plus tinker rather than the minus tinker here. I'm not saying buy or sell, because I wouldn't say it's straight full on. They're in the weird spot, right, where they can kind of tinker a little bit. That's why I'm using those terms rather than the buy or sell in the situation. But it definitely will make things really weird.
As I said, opportunistic is what Utah is going to be. I think there will be teams that come shopping at the Utah store. They have valuable assets, which we covered in our series of trade targets over the 4 nations. If you haven't checked out those videos and you want to see who our 5 top trade targets are on the Utah Hockey Club roster, feel free to go check those videos out as well, or the podcast, depending if you're listening to the audio version of this. But Robyn, there's a lot of depth, a lot of value on the Utah roster, but Utah also a position of strength. They have cap room, which a lot of teams don't, even with the cap going up. So they might be able to eat a little bit and get a bonus. Even if they're not the team that receives a player, they can be the bumper on a player that goes through Utah and then benefit by ending up picking up something in draft capital or prospects. So there's definitely the chance for Utah to even be involved that way. But all of that said, what we've been talking about, goaltending wise, we've been looking at the 2 goaltenders, Connor Ingram, Karel Vejmelka, and now I think Jackson Stauber has really entered the picture with the way he's played this year. But Robyn, one of the dominoes that fell today, and this is exciting for me because I love goalie chatter. Ville Husso going to the Anaheim Ducks from the Detroit Red Wings for future considerations. So Husso is 30. His numbers aren't great. He hasn't played a lot. 1-5-2 with a 3.69 goals against, 866. I remember when he was the next thing for the St. Louis Blues. And I remember seeing him, speaking of being in the American League. I mean, he was really, really good. But he's been with Grand Rapids part of it. But he has a great record with Grand Rapids, as you would expect of an NHL caliber goaltender, 8-4-0 in the American League. So he's been assigned to AHL San Diego, which Roadrunners fans are familiar with. And this is the last year of his deal. Here's the thing. The Ducks have John Gibson and Lucas Dostal. Gibson's 31. And I've been saying for years that Gibson needs to go somewhere to try to win, because now that he's 31, he's going to start to get to that declining period of his career if he maybe hasn't entered it a little bit already. But Anaheim wasted him. Anaheim wasted a lot of his prime years. He was exceptional for this Ducks team for a long time, and nobody knew because they've been terrible. So at 9.9-2 with a 2.66 and a 9.16, I think he's going somewhere. I don't think Dostal is. He's only 24. His numbers are better. But what I see happening, this lines up now for a John Gibson trade. I think he's finally going to go somewhere. He's finally going to move. And once Gibson goes, Gibson's probably the biggest goaltending name out there. And he is the one that once he moves, everything else is going to fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely is a fair assessment in this case, Tom, because how long have we talked about a potential John Gibson trade and things kind of not moving because of that? Like everyone was kind of like, it's almost like the world standing still because you're wondering, is Gibson moving? Where is he going? Who's going to get him? Who's going to, like, it's like a John Gibson sweepstakes because he's still, a great goaltender. I mean, he's, like you said, he's played on some really bad Ducks teams, so it doesn't help him in any case. Yeah, with the exception, I think, between the years 2017 and 2018, and that's about it.
Yeah. But again, I mean, and I hate it for Gibson. I feel like he's just been wasted. I really do. But just kind of looking at some of the contracts that are out there right now, you wonder, okay, who's expiring, who's around, who could possibly be going somewhere. And he tops my list.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know that there's anyone else I can think of who I'm immediately saying, yeah, that makes more sense that he would be on the move to a place like in Edmonton that needs a goaltender. And Edmonton has been swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss with so many different goalkeepers. Is Toronto 100% happy with Joseph Woll, who I like him as a player. I just wish he'd stay healthy. But look, I mean, this is what we're talking about. Like, and actually both those teams kind of swung and missed at Jack Campbell. There's teams out there that feel they're a goaltender away. And this could start a bidding war. But once he goes somewhere, that ups the trade value of a Vejmelka. That ups the trade value of an Ingram because now that piece is not there anymore. And if you're looking for either 1A or a 1B and you're looking at Utah, the price went up.
At that point, it's the quote big ticket item is now gone. So you have to, and if you're someone who, as you said, is, believes they're a team that they're just quote a goaltender away, whether it is a 1A or 1B, they will be willing to pay a little bit extra, pay a little bit of a premium price, especially if it's if it is, Tom, a goaltender who is playing pretty well.
And here's the other thing. I'm just thinking about this out loud, of course, Robyn, but what if they stay in the division? Here's an interesting thing for me. So, and I'm looking at Colorado. Okay. Colorado has Scott Wedgwood, journeyman, veteran, one more year at 1.5.
Wedgie.
But they also were right. We all know Scott Wedgwood. But they have Mackenzie Blackwood. And in next year's contract extension of 3 years at $5.25 million, Blackwood is signed up, but his no trade is there next year, not this year.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say they are or are not looking to move on a goaltender in Colorado, but if they were going to move on Blackwood, I thought about this. This is the time to do it because then he gets into a modified no trade clause. Once that happens, it's so much tougher. And now I don't know that you want to sacrifice Gibson and then have it as, Gibson and Wedgwood, and Wedgwood's 32. Now Blackwood's 28, so you're trading a few years there. But I mean, can you imagine John Gibson on Colorado? Oh my goodness. Wouldn't that elevate them to cup favorites right away? We're pretty close to it.
I mean, here's the other thing though. And a question to you, would Colorado flip Blackwood that quickly? Because they only acquired Blackwood just this last December from San Jose.
I think it depends if you think that what you're getting in Gibson is worth it. is better than that. And here's the other thing, honestly, for Mackenzie Blackwood, it's not a real slight against him, but he's also been a little bit of a journeyman as far as being a goaltender goes. Again, I know he's on the upside of age at 28, and so maybe he is just coming into his own. And obviously with that contract being signed, and it was just signed in December, so I get it. I know what I'm saying here, but I don't know. That just kind of makes me wonder if it were going to happen. Does Colorado think that's an upgrade? Because I'm not saying so. Colorado's not trading for Vejmelka over Blackwood, right? What's the point? But if you could get Gibson, at least I still consider Gibson an upgrade. He may not be. He may honestly, maybe he is starting to show his age a little bit. Maybe he is starting to show how many pucks he has seen. But
it's
you
hard
don't
to
know
tell.
that till you get it.
It is, and also it is hard to tell, especially because, as you mentioned, he plays for an absolutely terrible Anaheim Ducks team.
Yep. Although, I mean, they're 7-1-1 in their last 9, so they've managed to pick it up, which is scary. The Ducks are charging towards the wild card as well. But the upside is, I think that Gibson is a guy, and again, I wish he would have been moved when he was 28 or 27, when this idea first started circulating, but he didn't. And, now maybe, and this is just me reading tea leaves here on this, but again, I don't see Anaheim moving on from Dostal at 24 when he's playing as well as he is. He's their goalie of the future, and I think that's what makes Gibson expendable.
Fair enough. But Tom, how about this? Let's take a quick break. Then I want you to go full on NostraThomas and make some predictions on exactly how this is going to play out. We'll do that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine some bets into a same-game parlay. Hey, I know a lot of you guys who are listening to this show are probably, or very likely, Utah Jazz fans. Maybe you want to go ahead and say, hey, is Lauri Markkanen going to get over or under 17.5 points in a single game? There's the option on that. And I think it's a really good, it's a really neat little neat features that they have on there. So you can do on all the different kind of things, even beyond all that. I really highly recommend you check it out. Maybe you can put piece some things together, maybe make it fun being a Jazz fan, despite the season that they've been having. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Robyn, I looked around. I don't have anything cool, but I need like a hat if I'm gonna be NostraThomas.
NostraThomas.
So but I think I can do this. I like that, NostraThomas. Okay. All right. So
I told you I just came up with that like 30 seconds ago.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. I think we need a graphic for it. I think I need to look mystical and magical, and there needs to be some sort of glitter or crystal ball.
We'll do it. We'll get it done.
Absolutely. I think that would be fun. Okay. So what maybe a crystal hockey puck. What do you want me to gaze into my crystal hockey puck and figure out?
Ooh, let's do that. So I guess the first bit is you're saying this is very likely leaves open door for a John Gibson trade. Which dominoes are falling? Where does he go, and what happens after that, specifically with the Utah Hockey Club?
So, okay, this is a good question. It's basically what we're talking about here. But Edmonton needs a goaltender. Toronto needs a goaltender in my mind. I think that Gibson. And here's the thing. Anaheim, if they believe that Gibson's best hockey is behind him, but this is the time to wring the value out of him, I think that you pick him up and send him up there, and then know that you're going to be good in subsequent years. Whereas Gibson could go on a long run here, but I think Edmonton has to be eyeballing him, just like they're eyeballing Veggie. I think that, and honestly, now that Husso has moved, I wonder if the Red Wings are interested in moving either Cam Talbot or Alex Lyon. And of course, Talbot has been familiar, but Talbot's 37. I don't know if you go for that or not. Who are they willing to move on from? Do the Rangers want to move Jonathan Quick, who's 112 years old? That's another good question to ask. And I think, honestly, though, that looking at Gibson, the team that needs him the most is Edmonton. If Anaheim doesn't want to ship him in the conference, and we're looking out east, I think Swayman has finally stabilized himself. Rangers don't really need a goaltender. And in fact, let me just kind of look at the eastern side of the standings, because, Robyn, we so rarely do here.
That's true.
But heading in right now, so you've got top of the Atlantic. Toronto could use a goalie. Florida, Tampa don't need a goalie. Washington doesn't need a goalie. Carolina, I don't really think the Hurricanes need goaltending. The Devils do not. And right now, Detroit's in a playoff spot. Ottawa's in a playoff spot. They don't need a goalie. Columbus, I don't know. Maybe, Bruins are just on the outside looking in. Rangers on the outside looking in. Islanders just signed a big extension for Sorokin. They don't need a goaltender. Canadians have Maltembo. So really, if you're going anywhere in the East, I don't really know. I don't even get the feeling that Carolina is necessarily looking to move anything there. Their goals against is a little higher than some teams around, but Florida's worse than they are goals against. So I don't know. I think they're all right. I think they're fine. Toronto is maybe the team that, if Toronto in first place right now says Gibson's the difference for us to win a cup, that's it. And then I look at the West. Jets don't need a goalie. Stars don't need a goalie. Minnesota doesn't need a goalie. Vegas doesn't need a goalie. Edmonton does. Kings, maybe Kings. I don't know if I see Anaheim trading him to LA.
Going inner metro like that. Oh,
yeah, I don't know if I see that. Colorado, if they believe in Blackwood and they're keeping him, great, but I wonder if I would still, to me, it's still an upgrade. Canucks don't need a goalie. Calgary, I don't know. I think Dustin Wolf is there for the future. And then, obviously Utah, we've talked at length about this. And then St. Louis doesn't need a goalie. So those are kind of the targets for me. And I think, honestly, the team that will overpay for him because they're desperate for a cup is Edmonton. Not that Toronto's not, 1967 and all, but I think Edmonton is more likely to overpay.
I mean, Edmonton was what they were just, a goal away, essentially, right?
Yeah. And they just, it's a head scratcher for them, because sometimes they just have that meltdown. And I can't imagine what Connor McDavid's thinking when he's sitting there going, I just had a 4-point night and we lost 5-4. What do I need to do? You need to win 4-3 instead of lose 5-4. Better goaltending. Yeah. And better defense.
And now that McDavid is in his late 20s, I'm sure he's thinking in his head is like, I want to get one soon before he hit. He wants to get one before he hits 30. I'm sure that's his goal.
Well, think about that. That's McDavid and Draisaitl in Edmonton, and it's Matthews and Marner and those guys over in Toronto, right? The pressure's just as heavy in Toronto. So not to waste the window of their superstar players.
Exactly. All right. And then the effect trickle down to Utah?
I think Utah wants to extend Veg if they can.
Yes.
I feel like he's the guy. And if they extend him, Ingram does become expendable. But Ingram does not bring the return that a Vejmelka would. I think we can agree on that.
100%.
So Ingram then goes to a team that needs depth for goaltending and is okay with having an extra year on his deal. So again, to go back and look, on a team where you play as often as the Maytag repairman works, which would be Florida or Tampa. He's not hurting anybody there. He would probably get more work in Carolina, maybe New Jersey. Detroit's an interesting possibility. I don't know what Detroit, and he could be a great backup in Ottawa. Ottawa's just barely inside the playoff cut line, though. Same thing, Columbus actually makes sense for a guy like Ingram. I could see that because if they need someone there as a veteran to be able to help get them through a stretch, I could absolutely see that. I don't think so much of Boston or New York. And then in the West, again, just kind of looking at the top teams. I mean, Jets, Stars, you're not going to play much. Minnesota Wild, Marc-Andre Fleury is the best 1B in the league for me. Vegas, and, again, maybe Edmonton. Edmonton could use that depth if they lose out on the Gibson sweepstakes. The Kings, maybe. But other than that, no, I don't really see a team needing to take a shot at him. So maybe somebody's looking to build towards next year. Could be a place where Connor Ingram goes. He's still young. They're both still young. They're both in their 20s yet.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
There is plenty of time. And I feel like there will be some team who looks at it as an opportunity for them.
Yes. And knows that they're buying low on Ingram just because of the hard luck season he's had. This is not a knock on Ingram, the player, but he's been injured a couple of times. He had his bereavement leave. He's never really gotten on track because he has not played consistently. He is better than this. He's better than his numbers have shown. I believe that.
I think especially, Tom, and we've talked about this, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure we talked about this. But usually in the usual case, what we see when it comes to these 1A, 1B situations is they push each other, right? And that's in the ideal situation. We saw that for a couple, I think, not last season, but I think the previous season of the Arizona Coyotes, and seeing that that was the wedgie veggie tandem when it was Karel, Vejmelka, and Scott Wedgwood together. They made an incredible tandem because what happened was they did not want to give up the majority of the starts, so they both played incredible for a huge stretch of the season.
Wedgie veggie tandem. I like that.
It was a great tandem. I loved it because it sounded great too.
Fun to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you know what? You're right. And that's what you want. And I think that's what these guys are going to do down the stretch here. So, and as Utah pushes into a playoff spot, don't kid yourself. Goaltending is going to be incredibly important down the stretch.
It really will be. And I'm excited to see how all this affects Utah.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I think it's going to be good for them. So, and at the end of the day, I think they can benefit from the movement that's coming up. So I'm interested to know what the fans think too. If you guys want to leave us a comment, you want to reach out to us on social media. What do you think? Who's going? Who's staying? Is this the domino starting, or is it just, Tom, it's a minor league move. It's not all that important. What's your thoughts on that? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And then we will, we'll get back to you. We'll talk with you. We always do.
Yes, we do. And sometimes we bring your topics onto the show as well. We'll answer your questions right here on the show. So feel free to reach out to us. Robyn, where can they find us on social?
Yeah, you can find us everywhere on social, on X / formerly known as Twitter, on Instagram and Threads at LO_NHL Utah. We're also on TikTok and Blue Sky at Locked On Utah Hockey. You can find me at Robyn with a Y _LEANO. That's on X, and on Blue Sky at Robyn Ice Time.
I'm over on Blue Sky 99% of the time at Tom Talks, and I'm still at Callahan on air over on Twitter if you want to find me there. But Blue Sky is the best place to get me. So, Robyn, I know we have settled nothing, but we have talked about the potential here. And look, we've still got 2 weeks till this trade deadline hits.
Hey, that's when we started to really make things more concrete. We love the abstract. We start with the abstract, then we move to concrete.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to that. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here, and give us a like, a follow, a subscribe. Hit the old thumbs up if you're on the YouTube side. Helps us with the algorithm and helps you find more great hockey content as well. We will catch up with you next time. Thanks for being a part of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.